Welcome to Run Mode, an industrial automation podcast by Powermation. I'm your host, Terry Busch. In today's episode, we're speaking with Mitch Lawrence, a supplier partner with Eplan. Eplan is a digital engineering software platform that we'll discuss in detail. But first, let's do some news. Where are we in the AI hype cycle? Hype cycle is a concept to describe the typical progression of emergent technologies as they gain attention and adoption. It consists of 5 key phases. That technology trigger, those are the early adopters. Then you get that peak of inflation expectations. Excitement builds as those early adopters report success, but unrealistic expectations can lead to that hype. Then you get that trough of disillusionment. The interest declines, challenges emerge, many implementations fail to meet expectations. Then you get into that slope of enlightenment. Practical applications become a little bit more clear, and second-generation solutions improve usability. Plateau of productivity. The technology matures, adoption stabilizes, and its real-world value becomes widely recognized. This cycle helps businesses and investors gauge where technology stands in its development and adoption journey. Some hype cycle examples include the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s, search engines like Ask Jeeves, Yahoo, and Google eventually winning out. Over the years, IIoT, machine automation have both led to a hype cycle, and I've participated in both. The term artificial intelligence has been used since 1956, where researchers formally established AI as a field of study. Over the past 60 years, AI has gone through multiple waves of popularity, including periods of rapid advancements and AI winters, where funding and interest declined. Since its inception, AI has been used to describe a wide range of technologies, from expert systems in the 1980s to machine learning breakthroughs in the 2000s, and the rise of deep learning and generative AI in the 2010s and 2020s. The term has remained relevant as AI continues to evolve, adapting to new capabilities, applications across industries. Right now, AI appears to be moving past the peak of inflated expectations and into a more realistic phase of adoption. Initially, there was immense excitement about AI's potential, especially with generative models, ChatGPT, Copilot. However, businesses are now faced with the challenges of implementation, technical limitations, and the need for specialized skills. Also, AI, there is no intent. When a human being says, "I want a lollipop," it's an actual expression of desire. There's an entity with an ego that wants something. But when a large language model emits the same words, "I want a lollipop," there's no I present to do any wanting. It's just an algorithm that is selected through a sequence of words. Many industries are seeing a decline in AI enthusiasm, with fewer leaders believing AI will enhance their sector compared to previous years. At the same time, concerns about AI disrupting industries are rising as companies grapple with the impact on jobs and workflows. This suggests AI is entering in the trough of disillusionment, where expectations adjust to reality. But as practical applications continue to emerge, AI will likely move towards the slope of enlightenment, where sustainable use cases become more widespread. Many companies are looking for the outcomes of smart manufacturing, improved customer experience, and automated routine tasks. Just like with IIoT or even a new way to do a search engine, it's just another tool. It's not an outcome. That's something to think about. Today we're talking about efficient engineering, and joining me is Mitch from Eplan. Would you talk a little bit about yourself, your history, where you came from?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Terry. It's great to be here. So I'm Mitch Lawrence. I'm the Channel Sales Manager at Eplan USA. We are a company that is based out of Monheim am Rhein, and that is in Germany. We started in 1984 in the software industry, which if you think about software, 1980s, that was a long time ago.
Yep.
So we've been in the game a long time. Our focus is very heavily into industrial controls and electrical engineering design. And worldwide, we have just over, 1,700 employees now. And we are the global leader in this design space when it comes to electrical and mechatronic engineering. So when we get into some of the details here shortly, we'll get to better understand what that means.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about that Eplan and exactly what we're talking about in that engineering side of it.
Sure. So Eplan is a computer-aided engineering tool, and that tool is different from a traditional CAD tool in a lot of ways. And one of the main ways that we're very different, we set ourselves apart, is through what we call the data portal. And the data portal is a repository of component manufacturing data that is built specifically for the user to be able to leverage that data into their design process. So when think about taking something off of a shelf virtually and putting it directly into your design instead of having to draw a symbol and then label that symbol with a part number. This computer-aided engineering process is very helpful in the fact that it is going to utilize the data from the component manufacturers, which allows the user, in most cases, to generate reports that they would otherwise have to do manually. And we can talk more specifically about what some of those reports are as we get into it.
Yeah, back in the day when I drew schematics, and this was many, I'll throw 3 minis out there, many years ago. I had a separate document where I drew all those symbols myself. I did a copy paste, and that was a very manual process, but it was something that I was very familiar with. So let's talk a little bit about the competitors. I mean, who are you competing with in that space?
Yeah, so our biggest competitor, honestly, Terry, is the status quo of what folks are used to doing today, and they've become very accustomed to mundane tasks that take a lot of time. So when we walk into a business and we're talking about what software platform are they currently using, what is their traditional workflow, what is their process today, and we talk about offsetting that with something like Eplan that can really enable them to take their business farther faster. A lot of times, especially with engineers that have been using the same software tools for years and years, they are not as open to changing those processes. So I believe that status quo is most often our biggest competitor. It's people do the same thing that they've always done because that's what they know and that's how they've always done things. So
yep, doing that repetitive thing that they're accustomed to, that they're continually doing day in, day out, assuming it's efficient, assuming they're doing it in a timely manner, when they could very well be wasting time, but it's what everybody's comfortable with. So how does Eplan then help automate some of those repetitive tasks and explain a little bit more in detail on some of those things?
Sure. So again, if a user is taking data that's in that repository of the data portal and they're bringing that into their design, the component manufacturer has built that component in the virtual space. A lot of times it's going to have a 2D schematic representation. It's going to have a 3D actual representation of what the component's going to look like. But behind the scenes, there's going to be a lot more data specifically for that part. It's going to have things like the type of wire termination, the gauge of wire that the component requires, maybe even the voltage that the component requires or the amperage. So behind the scenes in Eplan, as a designer is building their panel, the data that is compiled from all of these components can be referenced in other portions of that design. So when it comes to generating things like a to-from list, where each component that is wired to another component with a wire, those wires are going to be automatically numbered in Eplan. The to-from list or the wire source and target list can be automatically generated in Eplan. And even things that you wouldn't think about, like the weight of the panel. If we're designing in a 3D space, we can even generate very quickly the weight of the panel overall, so that when it comes to logistics for shipping or hanging the panel on the wall, things like that, we're going to be able to utilize the data to get that very quickly.
So you're able to switch between like a 3D representation, a 2D representation, the schematic representation, have all the wires and all that, building it all out for you on the fly with those engineering tools. So when you're working together as a team, how does that work together from an engineering perspective, from a tools perspective, from an organization like an OEM, machine builder, that type of person working on a project? How do they share information with their colleagues?
That's a great question, Terry. I actually didn't cover this in the beginning portion. So the target customer for Eplan would really be those system integrators and OEMs that have very detailed and documented designs for their end users. They're also going to be building industrial control panels in an electrical schematic layout space. A lot of times in Eplan, we want to build those efficiencies into these customer workflows where they're gaining access to other time that they would traditionally spend doing mundane things, right? Mm-hmm. So OEMs and system integrators, engineering firms, design firms, and panel builders that do design are really the low-hanging fruit for Eplan to be able to gain the most efficiencies and the most time back in their workflows when they look at a tool like ours. So among the teams, what happens is, depending on if it's different departments or even different organizations, we have some cloud-based functionality where they can actually share Eplan files bidirectionally. So I could share an Eplan file with you, you could share an Eplan file back with me. The other beauty about Eplan is you can export file types into most likely any desirable file type that a customer would want, but things like a PDF or a DWG or DXF file, which are most commonly used in today's world, you can export those file types directly. You can also import those types of files into Eplan.
Are there different modules and things for different size, or is there a starting point for folks that want to demo or dip their toe in and then kind of expand from there?
Yes, there is, of course, different modules, different tools within the tool. Our two flagship models are really P8 and Pro Panel. So P8 in the Eplan world is going to be your 2D schematic layout space. So from an electrical engineer standpoint, that is going to replace their traditional CAD software, where they're going to have their symbols and their lines, but in Eplan, those are going to be representative of the actual component and the actual wire connecting those components. And then in Pro Panel, that is our 3D layout space. So in Pro Panel, that is where the designer is going to be able to put the panel together in a visual 3D world that's going to show them exactly what the panel layout will be, all the way down to snapping components onto DIN rail. Now, from a small company to a large company perspective, we have a fit in both of those worlds. There are a lot of opportunities in small businesses especially where they may only have one designer. They don't have a team of people. They have one person that has limited amount of time and limited resources. So a tool like Eplan can really open the doors for them and enable them to do more work in less time and really effectively change their business overall, where a larger customer that has a whole design team sometimes can be, it's a great fit, but it might be a harder implementation because there's so many players on the team where we're having to take multiple iterations to get additional team members trained in the platform.
And then with different models or different modules, if you're just an end user and you're building a one-off machine, you don't necessarily need your software to be able to lay out the panel per se. You just figure out where everything's going to go, you drill your holes, and you're good to go. But you definitely need the tools for the electrical schematics. But then if you're doing repeat and you've got a team in the back shop building these panels, those layouts are key to make sure everything fits in the space, and you've got the heat dissipation, all those things. That's kind of a neat thing that you guys work with there. Are there any other aspects for the customers that you could think of where, you know, it's unique in what they bring versus kind of that copy paste or the CAD model versus the CAE model?
So Terry, I think with this particular question, the customer journey from start to finish can be very different based on what the customer's use case is. To your point, a one-off design may not have a greater or a huge efficiency gain in Eplan because there is some front-end design work that needs to be completed within the platform. When it comes to the same job being completed or the same panel being produced or small iterations of very little variation, that's kind of the gold standard, but that's really the same in any platform, right? So if we have one-off opportunities, there are some building blocks and things within the Eplan platform that is going to enable an engineer to still be more efficient and effective in those cases. We're going to have things not only from the data portal side where we're utilizing the data from the component manufacturers, but we also have building blocks like macro technology. Macro technology, if you think about the building blocks of a design, those are going to be pre-built circuits, predefined components within those circuits where you could have variations of a circuit. So let's say you had a motor starter and you needed a 3/4 horsepower. Well then, somewhere along the design process, you figure out I actually need a 1.5 horsepower. You can simply go in and change that macro to the 1.5 horsepower motor starter circuit, and it's going to change all of those components that you've pre-configured before. So instead of you having to go plug and play one by one, you can change entire portions of your design very quickly. So even the one-off opportunities are going to be more effective and efficient in Eplan once a user's got their environment set up in their work processes and workflows.
Yeah, I've seen the macro when you were doing the demonstration at the office earlier. It's pretty impressive. Let's talk bigger picture. So now that a company decides to invest in that or utilize those tools, in your past experience with the customers that you've brought on this journey, what are some of the things that they've gotten for their ROI? How quickly can they see a change in their business? And what is that change?
Absolutely. So again, I think it depends slightly on the customer. Some customers are going to see the ROI very, very fast. I would say all of our customers, of course, are going to have ROI based on the size of the customer and how much of the implementation or onboarding that they do with us is going to determine kind of how quickly they see some of that return. Also, if we think about what are those returns, a customer that implements Eplan into their workflows or their work processes, on the front end, of course, there's going to be some learning within the software. We have to understand what the capabilities are and how to use the software platform because it is different than their traditional CAD. But once they start to see those efficiency gains, we've got some success stories where customers have taken a 100-hour job that they used to complete in a traditional CAD and they've cut it in less than half. They're doing the same amount of work in less than 40 hours now. We've also seen upwards of 80% efficiency gain, which to me is just absolutely astronomically crazy to think about. But we, on the Eplan side, typically will say that they're going to get anywhere from 40 to 65% of their time back. So again, the larger the team, the more those efficiencies can come and the faster they're going to see that return. But a small business that has that one guy or that one girl that's doing the design, that one resource, when they really get 40% of their time back, I mean, that's just going to open so many doors for those businesses. So again, I think it's based on the customer and their, what is their day-to-day. But the ROI for us is time, right? We want to give everyone the time back that they traditionally spend doing things that they don't need to. When the data's there and you design from data instead of designing to data, we have the data from the beginning. That's the foundation. It really enables us to build those efficiencies and gain that ROI very quickly.
That portal concept is really, really interesting because you have a customer that builds a machine and it's repetitive over and over again. And then you go in there and say, well, I don't want this component. I don't want an ABC motor starter. I want an XYZ motor starter. That's what the end customer says to the OEM. Now they got to go out and do the research. They got to download the CAD files. They got to do all this stuff to replicate these controls, replicate these components. In that portal, they can download those components automatically. from, like some of the vendors that we have at PowerMation, for example, are part of that. Can you explain some or talk about some of the vendors that you have access to and you utilize that tool for switching these things out?
Yes, of course. There are over 500 vendors in the data portal currently, and these vendors range anywhere from component manufacturers that may have a small data set of just a few components all the way up through the big guys in the industry. And we're talking about the Siemens, Rockwell, ABB, Festo. I mean, you talk about some of the biggest names in industrial automation. Those component sets are going to be in there for the user to be able to leverage. Now, we pride ourselves on keeping this robust library of components for the users, but really it comes down to the component manufacturers themselves. And they understand that if their data is there for the user, that their data can be downloaded and used, therefore their part is likely being purchased somewhere. So with the 500 component manufacturers that are represented currently, that number is always growing. Last time I checked, there was over 2.1 million parts, 2.1 million components or data sets in the data portal. When I first started at Eplan just under 2 years ago, that number was 1.5 million. So it is continuously growing. We're always adding new component manufacturers and new component data sets from the manufacturers that are already represented.
That's really cool that they're reaching out to you, probably more than you're reaching out to them, these manufacturers coming on board, because once you get one motor starter, you have them all, but no, they want to participate so they can reap the benefit of using your tool or having their customers use your tool. So what do you see the future? I mean, what investments are they utilizing at Eplan? What's going to be the 2-year, 5-year plan?
Yeah, so Eplan is a tool, like I said, that's been around since 1984. We have a team of software developers around the world. The team actually has grown to a number of over 500 software developers. And our goal is to be on the leading edge of electrical engineering design. Our tool is always being developed to bring in what the customer asks for, what the customer is going to get the most benefit out of, and also what is leading the industry currently. So things like AI or having the ability to generate additional reports or upload specific Eplan files into a automatic wire cutter or an automatic panel processing machine, things like that. We want to make sure that Eplan is capable, is working the most effectively for the customer, but also is, again, staying on that leading edge of the industry. So with the software development that we have currently, every year a user would subscribe to our licensing under a subscription basis. They would get the latest and greatest Eplan software.
So if they wanted to know more, where would they go?
Well, they have a few options. One, they can, of course, look us up online at eplanusa.com. They can go through our website, finding really unique and short videos that highlight the power of Eplan platform. Under our products page on the Eplan USA website, they would be able to view those videos and kind of get a synopsis of what it is. I would also encourage any customer or any prospect customer of ours that is interested in more about Eplan to reach out to their local PowerMation account representative, as PowerMation is a partner of ours and is an authorized distributor of our software.
That sounds great. Well, thanks for spending the time with us and explaining Eplan and introducing yourself. It's been a good time.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. It's been awesome.
I would like to thank Mitch for being on the show today, and I would like to thank you for listening. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and podcast to stay up to date on future episodes. See you next time.